What I said yesterday in the big opening statement was that, I always believed that there would be a virtual world and a physical world, and I thought the virtual world was where all the virtual money would be. And and now it's very clear that Bitcoin is actually potentially going to eclipse fiat currencies because it's just better. And if that's going to be the case, then first of all, if you manage a family and the money in a family, you should make sure that you have enough Bitcoin to keep your family alive for about 6 months. If you manage a business, you're personally liable for at least 2 weeks, and in Europe it's like a year, of all your employees getting their salaries, so you should hold a bunch of Bitcoin there. And if you're a government, you should probably hold some Bitcoin in case you have hyperinflation in your fiat currency. And the reason I say all this is that it's very likely that we will have a period where first the retailers say we accept Bitcoin. It's starting to happen. I mean, Bitcoin went off into the DeFi world for a while, and it'll continue doing that. And finance and commerce have to be completely reinvented, and they are in the process of being reinvented. And now with things like the Lightning Network being faster than a Visa transaction, and all of these, all the options and all the things you can do with Bitcoin, and then all the things you will be able to do with Bitcoin, retailers will start accepting it. And then there will be a point where retailers are saying, my Bitcoin's doing a lot better than the dollars. At first, they're going to think, oh, the Bitcoin is just something I'm using as a conduit. People want to pay in Bitcoin, I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to convert it back to dollars so I can use it in my business. Well, eventually, they're going to be going, God, if I had just held on to this Bitcoin, it would have really worked out for me. So I'm taking Bitcoin, and I'm holding it. And then the next thing they'll do is they'll say, I'm only taking Bitcoin. And then the consumer is going to go to that store and go, oh, I have to have Bitcoin. So they'll buy some Bitcoin, sell some dollars, buy some Bitcoin, and buy things in the store. And then there will be a moment when the consumer says, when there are enough retailers saying this, the consumer says, I got to get all my dollars out of the bank because I've got to put it into Bitcoin, because all these retailers, I can buy my food, my clothing, my shelter, all in Bitcoin, and I better go do that. And then they'll do it, and then word spreads super fast. When Silicon Valley Bank was going out of business, the run on the bank, it was Thursday. They basically ran out of money the word got out Thursday at 9 o'clock. They ran out of money Thursday at 11 o'clock. So the word spread that fast. Okay, so if there's a run on the banks, it will move that fast. So you want to be able to hold money in Bitcoin so that when that happens, and it's a non-zero chance, people always use that term, that this happens, you want to have enough Bitcoin in your business, your government, your personal account, so that you are not being the one clawing at the bank when it's 11 o'clock and all the money's gone. So, the reason I think about this is my dad, when I was about 10 years old, he gave me million bill. I went, wow, $1 million. What can I do with it? And he goes, nothing. And I said, what do you mean nothing? It's $1 million. That's $1 million Confederate dollars. The Confederates lost the war to the Union. The Union dollars were the ones in favor, the way Bitcoin might be in the future. And so they inflated the Confederate dollars. They printed more and more and more in hopes that, you know, it went from $1 to $1 to then it was like 5 Confederate dollars to 1 Union dollar, and then it was 100, and it was 1 million, and then it pretty much then it was completely worthless. And I think the same thing could happen with fiat money. Once we realize that, hey, we can operate all of our businesses without the friction of government or the banks, we're going to all be better off. I mean, every time I walk by one of these banks or big government office for the Fed or whatever, I think, wow, look at that big, beautiful building. It's glass and steel and all those very sharp-looking, well-dressed people coming out of it, getting into their very nice cars. And I think they're basically a friction item on our economy. And if that's all done in software, we don't really need them. Maybe as advisors, but we don't really need them all. And that's going to change the nature of our economy. Way back when, people shifted from shells to gold to the promise of gold. Every time there was one of those changes, we had an anthropological leap forward, and everybody got richer. And how does that work? Well, it's kind of like the way water works. Water comes down, and if you conserve it, this is a weird thing because all these people saying, oh, we got to conserve our water. Huge mistake, by the way. You got to conserve our water. So then no one can use it. It's sitting right there. But if you use the water, it goes back into the water table, comes back out, our table comes back out, boom, 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 boom. You can, you know, it's like running 5 showers in a row in the time you would have just run 1 shower. So the frictionless economy will operate the same way. If we have less friction, the money will move faster, so we will all be 5 times richer if you're using the water example. So it's the use of the money that improves everybody's world. And this is all based on a capitalist philosophy. And that is that if you and I do a deal, we're both better off. And we can do more deals because if money is moving faster. If you have, now with all the AI, if you have robots, let's say you have 50 robots in an assembly line, they all come from different companies, and you don't know how to pay the robots. The only way you could possibly pay them would be in Bitcoin, would be in some cryptocurrency. You have to move the money from one thing to another. I mean, I think we're at the right conference. You know, it just feels like we are. The one fear I have is if this cataclysmic event happens and people run on the banks to get Bitcoin, I mean, they can get their dollars out and then buy Bitcoin. We, the Bitcoin holders, are going to have to support all those people who didn't listen to us for the 20 years. I don't know, I've been wearing this tie for a long friggin' time. And I've told friends, and they say, oh, I should have bought Bitcoin when you told me to. And, oh, I should have. And I said, well, you still should buy some Bitcoin. And but a lot of those friends are going to be like, no money, lose their house, lose their. You got to think in terms of we are going to have to be the benevolent, the people who become benevolent in that scenario, because it will happen as fast as the Silicon Valley Bank, the run on the Silicon Valley Bank happened. We can communicate super fast. Social media goes boom, we all know. So if we have some event like that, it will be, it's going to be tough on the people who didn't, for whatever it is, 18 years, still didn't really listen and say, I guess I should buy some of this. So tell all your friends, tell all your relatives, make sure that they have enough Bitcoin to survive for 6 months. Just good idea generally. Yeah, Bitcoin's great because it's not subject to political whims. The government can, our government can just print money. Oh, hey, we're going to start a war, build a wall, do a whatever. We're going to provide health care to the world. We're going to do this. We're going to open the borders. Whatever they do, they tend to overspend. And if they overspend, then it's a hidden tax. We get inflation because they've printed more money. So like if you have $1 and the government decides that they are going to spend twice what they have, suddenly your dollar's worth 50 cents. That's not true of Bitcoin. There are only 21 million of them in the world. I don't know what that is in Satoshis. It's like in the quintillions or something. There are a lot of Satoshis in the world. But there are only 21 million times plus eight decimals. I don't know what that ends up being. Somebody knows, right? 2.1 quadrillion. There are 2.1 quadrillion. There are only 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis in the world, and there are 8 billion people on the planet. So have some Satoshis. So any questions, any thoughts? Yeah.
My name is Dulce, and I do Bitcoin education in the Global South, Latin America, and Africa. What is your recommendation? Because the model right now is like non-profit, but eventually you need to find a business model because it's hard to just. I don't like the idea of just waiting for the donors to give me more money, but I struggle to find a business model for education. We do technical education for developers, but it's still like, any advice?
Yeah. Whatever you do, it doesn't matter if it's a nonprofit or a for-profit. You should be providing a service that in some way builds a profit into the business. So that means if you are educating people on Bitcoin, somehow you should, I would suggest saying, look, you can buy it through us and then take some commission on it or something, so that when you get them to be enthusiastic about it and they start buying it, they're buying it through you because you educated them. That's just a business model. There are probably 500 business models that might work, but it tends to be a lazy nonprofit that says, hey, oh, this should happen, so I'll raise money to do it, and then they just have to keep raising the money. Yeah, it drives you crazy, right? Yeah. So it's so much better, to be a builder and to create a for-profit business with a profit motive. Or if it's better as a nonprofit, that's fine. There are a lot of companies that were able to skirt regulation by being nonprofits, which is kind of funny. Like you could be a bank as a nonprofit and you don't have to fill out any of those forms. So it's okay to be a nonprofit. It's just make sure you are building something that is going to make money, because then you are providing a service that people are willing to pay for, and it can grow on itself. And then you can make a bigger impact because the education system can start to grow because you'll have more money. And that's true for nonprofit, for-profit, whatever. Yeah.
The biggest problem is the tax, right? Because it's a commodity. And the government, who has to make the rules, wants us to use the CBDC. So I guess other than just keeping your Bitcoin free, you just have to leverage it and just use cash or CBDC. And how do you see them?
Sorry, the biggest problem is the tax?
Every time it's a capital gain, every time you sell with a Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely some rules we got to get rid of. And there's some that have to happen in the U.S. I think there are.
The CBDC. So how do you?
Well, actually, if you were the president and you said, here's what I would suggest we do, the Genius and Clarity Act are sort of Acts 1 and 2. Act 3, I believe, is if you operate your business completely in Bitcoin, then you can pay your taxes in Bitcoin, and you can keep the whole thing in smart contracts on the blockchain, and you don't have any of the friction items. And so you, as the president, you would say, my economy will grow faster because I don't have the friction of the auditor, the accountant, the bookkeeper, the tax collector, you name it. And so none of that friction gets in your way. And I mean, I would do it in this way. I would just say, okay, and we're just going to charge a 0.25% tax on every transaction. And that would actually pay for everything the government does. And just do it on a transaction. You wouldn't need income tax, no capital gain, no nothing. You would just, that little transaction tax could add up to be very significant. And I don't think it would.
I mean, I agree. I just think
Well, I think it would be a huge win if they said, if you run your business completely in Bitcoin, you can be taxed in Bitcoin. That would be a huge, like, if it's, a walled garden in Bitcoin, taxed in Bitcoin, that would be huge. And no capital gains on Bitcoin, because it does make sense. It's like, I got to figure out how to do this. Is like keeping accountants alive or employed forever and ever, because every transaction you do, you have to do a little capital gain switch for it. Makes no sense. Yeah.
Question. My name is Chris. I'm with Planet Capital. We invest mainly in systems that facilitate the usage of cryptocurrency. And one of the things that we see as an obstacle in the future is the general population's reluctance inability to use non-custodial devices, and that they'll be drifting towards using custodial devices, with obviously several disadvantages of that. What do you see? How do you see that in the future?
Yeah, sort of reminds me of stable coins. I think of stable coins as a bridge to Bitcoin, because they're getting people into something that moves currency faster, but it's still tied to governments or whatever. I actually look at the centralized platforms, the banks, including Coinbase and all of those. They're still centralized, and it's what we're used to doing, at least in the U.S. But anybody who's held a ledger in their hands and they said, whoa, this is really cool. All my money's here? Wait, I don't need it. I don't need the bank? What? They're pretty excited about it. And I think down the road, as we get identity to be much better and more accurate, having the identity and the ledger, and I think that's going to be a better way to operate. And I think we will eventually get there. You know, all technologies, every new technology gets sort of beaten on by the existing status quo for a long time before it finally sees the light and replaces the old technology. I mean, the automobile came and it was like they called it the horseless carriage. And they had to fight the saddle makers and the buggy whip manufacturers and the buggy manufacturer, and it was an ongoing thing before people were actually in the automobiles. Electricity, they thought that was witchcraft, and they were fighting against electricity for years and years. The fork, they thought the fork was ugly. And so even though the fork was much more practical than the spoon, it was ugly for years and years. Bitcoin's better technology. It's just there. It's better technology. So much better than having, you know, the money run through the hands of a bank and through the hands of a government before it gets to the other people. I mean, we'll get there. It's just a lot of good engineers are working very hard to make this all happen. So, yeah.
I really want to ask about where you think the price of Bitcoin is going, but I'd rather ask about how you think the Bitcoin community should deal with quantum risk and what to do with the Satoshi.
I'll tell you, if I were the banking community, I'd be flipping out about the quantum risk. The banks are, I mean, if I've got a quantum computer, I can hack a bank like that. But if I've got a quantum computer and I'm looking at Bitcoin, I become a miner. And if I become a miner, I start mining and I'm getting all this Bitcoin, but I'm also watching the blockchain. That's what they do, right? They mine for Bitcoin and they watch the blockchain. Well, so the next one that comes in, if they want to come hack it, we've already got a huge defense against it. So, okay, worst comes to worst, the first guy with a quantum computer comes in there and wants to hack Bitcoin. We can roll it back. It's happened before. We can roll the blockchain back. So this is one of those things the press, oh, the sky is falling, it's going to all be horrible, whatever. It is going to be horrible for banks. I don't know. My Bitcoin hasn't been hacked, but my bank has been hacked. My bank account has been hacked, and they couldn't make me whole. I mean, think of what's going to happen when there are quantum computers going in there. That's something to worry about. You're worried about Bitcoin? Are you kidding me? It's way better technology than they've got in the banks. So, you know, I love all the non-issues the press throws out at us, and then it's like, okay, yeah, we have to explain that the world is moving in our direction, and you know we're way more advanced than what is existent out there. And right now, there's a lot more money in the banks than there is in Bitcoin. So, you know, if you're a thief, if you're North Korea, by the way, socialism generates thieves. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea for a zillion reasons, but it is a really bad idea because North Korea is like a den of thieves. They're all thieves, and it's all because of the leadership being socialist. And they're all dirt poor. It's a horrible place to be. Yeah.
Yeah, question on of your personal VC investing. You don't have to name names. What are the moonshot trends that you're betting inside of Bitcoin?
Okay, the moonshot trends. Here, you ready? Ready for it? Here it comes.
Your money is in it.
I call it other. I mean, when we talk to our LPs, we say, you know, our investors, the LP limited partners, I'm not really great at convincing an LP to invest with me, except they look at the record and they go, oh, okay. But I go to them and I say, okay, if it were today, here's what I would be looking at. I'd be looking at space and transportation. I'd be looking at how AI and robotics come together. I'd be looking at biocures, because Big Pharma's been making all its money off chemotherapies and we're living shorter lives, so something's wrong there. And it's about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin economy and everything around it. Those are the things that I would say today. But then I always say, but where we're really going to invest is other. Something some entrepreneur comes to me with, there's no way I can imagine the world of 8 billion people and what they're going to come up with. There are a lot of very creative people in the world. And so what we do is we just make sure that the world knows that they come to Draper for their first money. And then we have a pretty good sense of what the world might look like going forward. Yeah.
Hey, my name is Eric Pan. I have a little over close to 500,000 followers across socials.
I thought you were going to say I have 500,000 Bitcoin, and I went, wow, very impressive.
500,000 followers. So
Second to Satoshi. Yeah.
my question is, what do you think are the catalysts as to get two things: mainstream adoption and price going up? Because those don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Well, you have a bunch of followers, so you can tell them about it. And we're kind of at mainstream. I mean, I'm feeling it. Are you guys feeling it? I mean, the banks are going to say, oh, yeah. They want you to take, they hate that you're taking some of their dollars and you're buying Bitcoin with it. It just drives them friggin' crazy. And now they can custody that. And so they go, no, you can keep that with us. No problem. So it's kind of mainstream. And, you know, government's talking about it. It seems like mainstream stuff to me. Getting it accepted at retail, I think, is probably the next big step. I think everywhere you go, whenever you go to, I do this, by the way. Go to I went over to Five Guys over here, and I said, you know, burger, whatever. You guys take Bitcoin? By the way, somebody did say yes, and I went, oh, can I pay in dollars? So that's what I think is just, you know, spread the word, tell people, you know, make sure you have some, and at some point it will be the only currency. I mean, if all the trends continue, it's like Bitcoin used to be 40% market share of cryptocurrency, and then it went to 50, and it was 61, probably be 70 after this boom and bust, and boom again. So it does feel like it's sort of converging on the only currency people are going to want is Bitcoin. So maybe that, I mean, there could be other great currencies for specific purposes and that kind of thing. But look, money should be transferred in software. It shouldn't be transferred through a bank into a government controlled by a central bank, blah, blah, blah. It shouldn't be. It should be decentralized. We should be able to do with it what we want, move it across borders. Eventually, we'll get there. And once the retailers start accepting it, and then when the retailers realize that this is a much better deal, and that usually tends to be when Bitcoin's trending up, that the retailer goes, oh, wait, I've left a lot on the table here. You know, now they have to also make it, they have to make it super easy. Like that point of sale thing, you got to be able to like drop your card, drop your phone, whatever, and boom, it's done.
Well, Square is kind of doing that now. They're enabling that.
Square's doing it on for Bitcoin too.
Yeah, every merchant uses Square. Now, with the flip of the switch, turn on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
As
And I guess spending small amounts in Bitcoin probably helps this thing move ahead. But I kind of have these diamond hands. I can't let it go. Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, I want to first say that I have a lot of respect. You made all the right moves in the last 12 years or so.
It was actually simple. I just bought it and then held on. There was no move.
Well, listen, so now I have to drop the other shoe. I think that your take on quantum is a little light. You know,
Is a little light.
yeah, I'm a little bit more concerned. Let's take you used the example.
Well, there's some great software companies that are putting up defenses too. So I mean, there are a lot of things going on, but I don't think it's light. I think it's just like if you're a thief, you go for the easy money. The easy money's in the bank.
I think the argument to that would be that a bank is centralized, and a lot of them have quantum proofing in place. With us, with Bitcoiners, what we got to do is we got to convince everybody to make a fork. And I think that's
Not necessarily, just a technical conversation.
We have time for one more question, Tim.
Okay. Good. Interesting point, though. Yeah.
What do you think about Bitcoin-backed loans and using Bitcoin as collateral?
I almost did that because when Bitcoin hit 60,000, I thought, should I just? I never liked borrowing ever, but I thought it's pretty low. Should I just borrow up a bunch of money and then double down? I almost did, but I didn't. No, I think it's great. Bitcoin-backed loans, I mean, from both sides, that can work out very well. As I said, if I make a deal with you, we're both better off. You know, at the time, sometimes they don't work out for one party or the other, but at the time, it's like, this is an important thing for both of us to do. So I like everything around that. And I think Bitcoin Fi or DeFi or whatever has, I mean, that has played well. People have, so a lot of the people around here are investors, speculators, option holders, traders, that kind of thing. You don't see that many retailers. I think 5 years from now, you see a bunch of retailers. It'll be a different kind of a vibe. But software has been built properly for the financial part of Bitcoin. And I think to get down to the consumer, the retailer, it's got to be just so much easier than whatever they're using now. And it's just, we're not quite there in the ease of use thing. Yeah. Okay, great. I guess I'm done. Oh, wait, one more?
Could you talk about when you bought Bitcoin from the government years ago?
What Bitcoin, what?
You bought Bitcoin from the government. Yes. Your story.
Oh, well, you know, the first Bitcoin I bought was at $4, and they were going to mine it for me, and it was the Wild West. All sorts of weird things were happening. The guys who built the chips front ran us, and so never got us our chips, so they couldn't mine it. We stored it at Mt. Gox, and those guys stole the money or whatever they did. That disappeared. I mean, it was just kind of the Wild West, so and then I thought when Mt. Gox stole all the money, I thought, oh, that's the end of Bitcoin. And I thought, you know, why did Bitcoin only drop like 15% the day that happened? I think it was because, at first I thought, oh, it's the guns and drug guys. They just need this thing bad. And then I thought, might as well do a little research. So it turns out we were banking the unbanked. We were there. You could remit money for free. You know, in effect, pretty close to free. You could, if you didn't have a bank account, you could be a part of the world economy. If you were a big corporation and you were hiring people without bank accounts, you now had a way to pay them. all of a sudden I was thinking, oh my God, this is opening up the world economy in a huge way, which is basically why I did it and why I held it this whole time, was because I thought, this is good. That has been a helpful algorithm for me. Every time I make an investment, if I say this is good, then it's like, it's probably going to work out. Okay, great, my pleasure.